September 15th, 1940. The Prime Minister's official residence, Tokyo, Japan. Cigarette smoke filled the room, hanging thick in the air. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto pressed his third lucky strike into an ashtray. The cigarette was American. No one missed the irony. Prime Minister Prince Fumimaro Kono spoke plainly, cutting through the usual careful language of Japanese politics. If we go to war with the United States, he asked, what are our chances? Yamamoto did not hesitate. If I am ordered to fight, I will run wild for 6 months, maybe a year, but after that, I have no confidence at all. The room went silent. The officers shifted in their seats. This was the commander of Japan's combined fleet, the man who would have to fight this war, saying defeat was only a matter of time. What they did not understand was that Yamamoto was not guessing. He had seen America with his own eyes. He had walked through its factories, studied its oil fields, and counted its production numbers down to the smallest detail. He learned these lessons years earlier, in classrooms at Harvard, in steel mills in Pennsylvania, and among the oil wells of Texas. Yamamoto knew something his colleagues did not want to accept. Japan had already lost any long war with America before it even began. The only question was time. 6 months. That was all he could promise. Half a year of victories before America's industrial power fully woke up. Isoroku Yamamoto was born Isoroku Takano on April 4, 1884, in the small city of Nagaoka in Niigata Prefecture. He was the 6th son of a poor school teacher. His father was 56 years old when he was born, which is why he was named Isoroku, meaning 56. The family lived in deep poverty. Rice was a luxury. They survived mostly on barley and sweet potatoes. Hunger was common. Those early hardships stayed with Yamamoto for life. They made what he later saw in America even more shocking. In 1916, Takano was adopted into the Yamamoto family, a common practice in Japan for career advancement. By that time, he was already a combat veteran. At the Battle of Tsushima in 1905, he had lost 2 fingers on his left hand while watching Japan destroy Russia's Baltic fleet. That victory convinced many Japanese officers that spirit and courage could overcome any material weakness. Yamamoto knew better. Japan had beaten Russia only because Russia had sent its fleet halfway around the world and was collapsing from revolution at home. The United States would face no such problems. To truly understand this, Yamamoto needed to see America himself. That chance came in 1919 when the Navy sent him to the United States to study English at Harvard University and observe American naval development. It was a decision that would change history. In April 1919, Yamamoto arrived at Harvard wearing his naval uniform and carrying 2 swords. He stood out immediately among the brick buildings and green lawns of Cambridge. Officially, he was there to study English. His final grade, a C+, did not impress anyone. But the real education happened outside the classroom. Yamamoto lived simply, renting modest rooms and sleeping only 3 or 4 hours a night. He spent the rest of his time reading everything he could find about American industry, oil production, and aviation. His room filled with maps of oil fields, factory statistics, and technical journals. While other Japanese students attended lectures and social events, Yamamoto lived in libraries. At Harvard's Widener Library, he focused on one subject above all others: oil. In 1919, the United States produced 65% of the world's oil, nearly 380 million barrels in a single year. Japan produced almost none and depended on imports, much of them from America. But books were not enough. In summer breaks, Yamamoto traveled across the country on his own, often hitchhiking with little money. He slept in barns, fields, and train stations, eating cheap food so he could travel farther. In the summer of 1920, he reached Detroit. Outside the Ford Highland Park plant, Yamamoto watched 20,000 workers pour out at the end of a shift. Most of them climbed into their own cars. In Japan, even senior officers rarely owned automobiles. Inside the factory, Yamamoto toured the assembly line by posing as an engineering student. He watched as a Model T rolled off the line every 45 seconds. Each worker performed a single task with perfect timing. From raw steel to finished car took just over an hour. Yamamoto filled 3 notebooks in 1 week. Ford alone employed more industrial workers than the entire Japanese Navy. The factory used more steel in a day than Japan produced in a week. And this was only one company. Americans have turned manufacturing into science, Yamamoto later wrote. Everything is measured, everything is improved, nothing is wasted. He understood what this meant. The same factories that made cars could make trucks, tanks, and aircraft engines. The same workers could build weapons. The same supply systems could feed armies. Before leaving America, Yamamoto made one final journey. In the summer of 1921, he traveled to the oil fields of Texas. For 6 weeks, he vanished from official schedules, alarming diplomats. He rode freight trains, walked miles on foot, and spoke directly with oil workers and engineers. At Spindletop, where the modern oil industry had begun, Yamamoto saw the source of American power. Single wells produced more oil in 1 day than Japan could import in a week. Standing there, Yamamoto understood the truth completely. Against a nation like this, Japan could strike hard, but only briefly. After that, the numbers would decide everything.
The Texaco refinery at Port Arthur, which Yamamoto carefully sketched in his notebooks, processed nearly 100,000 barrels of oil every day. The entire complex ran on electricity. Pumps worked automatically. Electric lights burned day and night without pause. "Oil is the blood of modern war," Yamamoto wrote in his journal. "Ships, planes, tanks, and trucks all run on oil. America has oceans of it under their soil. Japan has none. This one fact decides everything." From Port Arthur, Yamamoto traveled north to the newly discovered oil fields near Kilgore and Longview. He arrived just as East Texas was exploding into the largest oil-producing region on Earth. Oil derricks rose everywhere, packed so tightly that workers could walk from one to the next without ever touching the ground. Natural gas, seen as useless waste, was simply burned off. Tall flares lit the night sky for miles in every direction. This waste shocked Yamamoto deeply. Japan measured and saved every drop of fuel it imported. In America, enough gas was burned off each day to power Tokyo for an entire month. This casual abundance, more than any warship or army exercise, convinced Yamamoto that America could not be defeated in a long war. In January 1926, Yamamoto returned to the United States as Japan's naval attaché in Washington, now holding the rank of captain. This posting lasted until March 1928 and confirmed every fear his Harvard years had created. Now he had diplomatic status, official access, and money to travel freely. His first goal was to update his knowledge of American industry. The growth stunned him. By 1926, American automobile production was approaching 4.3 million vehicles a year. Steel output reached 48 million tons. Oil production passed 770 million barrels annually. These numbers were not slowing down, they were accelerating. Yamamoto created a strict routine. From Monday through Wednesday, he worked at the Japanese embassy, attending meetings and official events. From Thursday through Sunday, he traveled. His focus never changed: production capacity, raw resources, and technology. In Pennsylvania, he visited the Bethlehem steel plant and watched armor plate being made for warships. Electric furnaces produced specialized steel in hours, steel that Japanese factories needed weeks to produce. The plant employed 30,000 workers and used more electricity than the entire city of Kyoto. In Birmingham, Alabama, Yamamoto studied the supply chain behind American steel. Trains arrived every hour, bringing iron ore from Minnesota, coal from Pennsylvania, and limestone from Indiana. Materials crossed thousands of miles with perfect timing, coordinated by telegraph and telephone systems Japan could not match. During his Washington posting, Yamamoto became well known for his poker games. Every Friday night, he hosted games at his apartment, inviting American naval officers, diplomats, and intelligence officials. These were not just social gatherings, they were intelligence operations played over cards and whiskey. Captain Ellis Zacharias of U.S. Naval Intelligence attended regularly. In his 1946 memoir, Secret Missions, Zacharias later wrote that both sides carefully tested each other during these games. While bluffing at the table, they quietly probed views on naval strategy, ship design, and military thinking. Yamamoto was brilliant at poker, Zacharias recalled. He remembered every card, calculated odds instantly, and read faces with ease. More importantly, he used the games to study American psychology. Yamamoto learned something vital. Americans were willing to take risks because they could afford losses. They played boldly because they had deep reserves. They could lose hands and keep playing. Yamamoto saw this as a reflection of American strategy. The United States could lose battles, even whole campaigns, and still continue the war. Japan, with limited resources, could not survive a single major defeat.
The facility's electrical output exceeded that of all Japanese naval bases combined. San Francisco Bay was surrounded by military installations, each larger and more advanced than anything Japan possessed. In Los Angeles, Yamamoto witnessed the early growth of the aviation industry that would one day defeat Japan. The Douglas Aircraft Company, founded only 6 years earlier, was already producing advanced aircraft using new stressed skin construction methods. The company employed more than 300 engineers, experimenting with designs that would not appear in Japan for another decade. Yet it was Southern California's oil fields that impressed Yamamoto most. The Los Angeles basin contained more than 20 major oil fields. Signal Hill alone held 265 wells, packed so closely they looked like a forest of steel towers. California produced over 230 million barrels of oil each year, more than Japan would use in 5 full years of war. The ports told the same story. San Pedro and Long Beach were expanding rapidly. The facility's electrical output exceeded that of all Japanese naval bases combined. San Francisco Bay was surrounded by military installations, each larger and more advanced than anything Japan possessed. In Los Angeles, Yamamoto witnessed the early growth of the aviation industry that would one day defeat Japan. The Douglas Aircraft Company, founded only 6 years earlier, was already producing advanced aircraft using new stressed skin construction methods. The company employed more than 300 engineers, experimenting with designs that would not appear in Japan for another decade. Yet it was Southern California's oil fields that impressed Yamamoto most. The Los Angeles basin contained more than 20 major oil fields. Signal Hill alone held 265 wells, packed so closely they looked like a forest of steel towers. California produced over 230 million barrels of oil each year, more than Japan would use in 5 full years of war. The ports told the same story. San Pedro and Long Beach were expanding rapidly, equipped with electric cranes and automated loading systems. A single pier could move more cargo in 1 day than Tokyo Harbor handled in a week. The infrastructure needed to project power across the Pacific already existed. When Yamamoto returned to Japan in March 1928, he submitted a detailed 200-page report on American industrial and military strength. It should have ended any discussion of war. His conclusions were blunt. American manufacturing outmatched Japan's by 10 to 20 times in every critical area. American oil production exceeded Japan's total wartime consumption by a factor of 100. American steel output was 12 times greater. American automobile factories proved that mass production could be instantly converted to military use. American aviation was advancing so fast that Japan could never catch up. The report was classified, filed away, and mostly ignored. The Navy Ministry focused only on sections dealing with American warships, dismissing the industrial analysis as irrelevant. The Army, focused on expansion in China, showed no interest at all. Yamamoto became increasingly isolated. Instead of being respected, his experience in America made him suspect. Some whispered that he had become too American.
His habits, drinking coffee instead of tea, sneaking lucky strikes, reading American magazines, marked him as tainted by foreign ideas. Still, Yamamoto did not stop warning them. In lectures, articles, and private meetings, he repeated the same message. Japan could not defeat the United States in a long war. The gap was not just in numbers, but in quality. America built a system that constantly improved itself. Japan, limited by resources and tradition, could not match that pace. By 1939, Yamamoto's opposition to war made him a target. Ultra-nationalist army officers, the same men who had assassinated moderate politicians, now focused on the Admiral who insisted Japan could not win against America. The threat became so serious that Navy Minister Admiral Mitsumasa Yonai, who shared Yamamoto's views, acted to protect him. On August 30, 1939, Yamamoto was appointed Command-in-Chief of the Combined Fleet. The move was meant to save his life. At sea, he would be beyond the reach of assassins. The irony was complete. The man most opposed to war with America was now placed in command of the force that would have to fight it. Yamamoto understood the cruel logic. If war came, Japan needed its best strategist in charge, even if that strategist believed the war could not be won. "I have been given command of the Combined Fleet," he wrote to his friend Yoshida. "It is like being asked to perform surgery on a patient who insists on committing suicide. I may delay the pain, but I cannot prevent the death." His opposition never changed. In September 1940, as the tripartite pact with Germany and Italy was debated, Yamamoto warned it would inevitably lead to war with the United States. To Prime Minister Konoe, he was direct. "If we fight America, I can give you 1 year. After that, I promise nothing." A month later, speaking to Navy Minister Admiral Oikawa, he was even clearer. "If I am ordered to fight, I will do my utmost for 6 months. I will run wild during the first half-year, but I have no confidence at all for the second or third year." The greatest irony of Yamamoto's career came in January 1941, when he was ordered to plan the attack on Pearl Harbor. The man who knew Japan could not win was tasked with finding a way to begin the war. His plan was based entirely on what he had learned in America. Yamamoto believed America's weakness was psychological, not industrial. Safe behind 2 oceans, Americans did not expect attack. Their strength bred complacency. A sudden, devastating blow might shock them into negotiation before their full industrial power could be unleashed. It was a desperate plan because Japan's situation was desperate. Japan needed to destroy the U.S. Pacific Fleet before it could interfere with operations in Southeast Asia. More importantly, Japan needed to convince America that continuing the war would be too costly. Even as he planned the attack, Yamamoto knew the truth. The attack itself would succeed. His pilots would devastate Pearl Harbor. The failure would come afterward. He had seen the factories that would build the counterattack. He had measured the oil that would fuel it. He had studied the production systems that could create fleets of ships and planes faster than Japan could sink them. Pearl Harbor would be a tactical victory and a strategic disaster, exactly as Yamamoto predicted. As 1941 progressed and war became unavoidable, Yamamoto's warnings grew sharper. To officers boasting of Japan's strength, he offered numbers instead of slogans. America has 500 tons of oil for every ton we possess. They produce 500 times more steel. Their factories can convert to weapons production in weeks. We have already lost this war. We simply have not started fighting it yet. In September 1941, speaking to graduating cadets at his alma mater in Nagaka, Yamamoto delivered his most personal warning. Many people believe Americans love comfort and lack spirit. This is a serious mistake. Americans are full of energy, courage, and determination. Their thinking is scientific and advanced. Lindbergh's flight across the Atlantic is normal for them. He ended with words few dared to speak aloud. American industry is far more developed than ours. They have all the oil they need. Japan cannot defeat America. Therefore, Japan should not fight America. The graduates sat in silence.
A soldier cannot take pride in striking a sleeping enemy, Yamamoto said. Judge success only after you see how the enemy responds. An angered enemy will strike back with full force. What troubled Yamamoto most after Pearl Harbor was not just the failure to sink the American aircraft carriers. It was the failure to destroy the oil storage tanks and repair facilities. From his visits to American ports, he knew how quickly the United States could repair ships and restore operations. The damage at Pearl Harbor looked massive, but in reality, it was shallow. Even worse was the diplomatic failure that made the attack a complete surprise. Yamamoto had demanded that the attack come after a formal declaration of war. Due to mistakes at the Japanese embassy, the declaration arrived too late. To Americans, Pearl Harbor now looked like a sneak attack. Any chance of negotiation vanished instantly. "I hoped to fight an honorable war," Yamamoto told Admiral Ugaki. "Instead, we have guaranteed our own destruction through dishonor." Just as Yamamoto predicted, Japan ran wild for 6 months. The combined fleet swept across the Pacific. All Allied forces collapsed one after another. Singapore fell, the Philippines fell, the Dutch East Indies fell. By May 1942, Japan ruled an empire stretching from India's border to the Central Pacific. But Yamamoto felt no pride. He knew these victories were illusions, possible only because America had not yet fully mobilized. In his cabin, he studied charts tracking American ship production. The numbers were terrifying. In the first 6 months of 1942 alone, American shipyards launched 2 aircraft carriers, 4 cruisers, 23 destroyers, and 26 submarines. And this was only the beginning. Yamamoto knew those shipyards were still expanding. Once fully operational, they would build ships faster than Japan could destroy them. The oil situation was even worse. Even after capturing the oil fields of the Dutch East Indies, Japan could not come close to American output. The United States produced more oil in a single month than Japan's captured fields produced in an entire year. And America's synthetic rubber industry, something Yamamoto had studied years earlier, meant they didn't even need Asian rubber supplies. "We are children who have stolen candy," Yamamoto told an officer. "We celebrate while the adult prepares his punishment." The Battle of Midway began on June 4, 1942, almost exactly 6 months after Pearl Harbor. Yamamoto's prophecy was about to be fulfilled with brutal precision. The Midway Plan was complex, perhaps overly so. It reflected Yamamoto's desperation. He knew this might be Japan's last chance to destroy American carriers before overwhelming reinforcements arrived. Intelligence reports suggested America had only 2 operational carriers in the Pacific. In reality, America had 3 and had broken Japanese naval codes. The disaster unfolded exactly as Yamamoto had feared. In a single day, 4 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, were sunk. These losses could not be replaced. Japan lacked the factories, materials, and trained pilots needed to recover. Aboard the battleship Yamato, hundreds of miles behind the battle, Yamamoto received the news calmly. When told that all 4 carriers were lost, he simply nodded. Some officers later said he looked almost relieved, as if a terrible weight had finally arrived. "The American giant is now fully awake," he said. "From this moment on, we fight only to delay the inevitable." The numbers proved him right. In the 18 months after Midway, the United States launched 17 fleet carriers and 76 escort carriers. Japan launched only 6 fleet carriers total. The industrial math Yamamoto had calculated years earlier was now unfolding exactly as expected. After Midway, American production reached levels beyond even Yamamoto's darkest estimates. By 1943, American factories were producing 1 aircraft every 5 minutes, 1 cargo ship per day, 1 aircraft carrier per month, 150 tanks every day, and 500,000 military trucks each year. The Ford Willow Run plant, built after Yamamoto's visit to Detroit, produced B-24 bombers at a rate of 1 every 63 minutes. The entire factory had been built in just 9 months, faster than Japan could build a single major plant. Yamamoto read these reports with grim confirmation. Everything he had warned about was happening, faster and on a larger scale than he had imagined. The assembly lines he had once studied were now creating the weapons that would destroy Japan. The oil crisis became fatal. By 1943, America produced 1.7 billion barrels of oil per year. Japan's total reserves were only 50 million barrels and shrinking daily. American submarines, built faster than Japan could counter, were cutting off fuel shipments from Southeast Asia. "I warned them about the oil," Yamamoto wrote in his diary. "I showed them the numbers. They refused to believe. Now our ships sit idle for lack of fuel, while American fleets move freely." Through late 1942 and early 1943, Yamamoto commanded the combined fleet, knowing defeat was inevitable. Letters to Chiyo Kawashima, found after the war, reveal a deeply burdened man. "I am like a doctor treating a terminal patient," he wrote. "I can ease pain and delay death, but I cannot change the outcome. The disease is industrial weakness, and it is fatal." His staff noticed the change in him. He took greater risks. He exposed himself to danger unnecessarily. During inspection tours, he insisted on visiting the most dangerous positions, as if welcoming death. Admiral Ugaki wrote, "The commander seems to seek danger. He knows what we refuse to accept, that we have already lost. His burden is not command, but knowing the truth." Yamamoto's final assessment, written in March 1943, was blunt. "America has replaced every ship lost at Pearl Harbor twice over. They have trained more pilots in 1 year than Japan has trained in 20. Their production grows monthly while ours shrinks. Victory is decided by mathematics, not courage. The mathematics doom us."
In April 1943, American codebreakers intercepted Yamamoto's travel plans. He would fly from Rabaul to Balale Island on April 18th to inspect forward bases. The schedule was exact to the minute. Operation Vengeance was approved. Admiral Nimitz asked whether killing Yamamoto was worth revealing American code-breaking abilities. The answer was yes. Yamamoto was irreplaceable, not just as a commander, but as the only Japanese leader who truly understood American power. 18 P-38 Lightning fighters launched from Guadalcanal, flying low over the ocean to avoid radar. They navigated over 400 miles of open sea to arrive at the precise moment Yamamoto's aircraft appeared over Bougainville. The weapons that killed Yamamoto represented everything he had warned Japan about. Mass-produced aircraft, powerful engines, high-octane fuel from American oil fields. The industrial force he had studied, feared, and described for decades had finally reached him.
Their navigation was perfect, their timing exact, their execution flawless. At 9:34 a.m., Admiral Yamamoto's Mitsubishi G4M bomber was shot down over the jungle of Bougainville. The man who had personally witnessed America's industrial strength was killed by its products, advanced fighters guided by code-breaking technology Japan could not match. His body was found the next day, still strapped into his seat, one hand resting on his sword. In his coat pocket was a poem he had written days earlier. "I have seen the future. It belongs to those who build, not those who destroy." With Yamamoto's death, Japan lost the one leader who truly understood how hopeless its situation was. His successor, Admiral Minachi Koga, lacked Yamamoto's strategic insight and had no first-hand experience of American power. The prophecy Yamamoto had made in 1940, 6 months to 1 year of success, followed by inevitable defeat, proved exactly correct. Every prediction he made based on his time in America came true. American factories overwhelmed Japanese forces exactly as Yamamoto had calculated. American oil supplies proved endless, while Japan's steadily vanished. American technology, especially radar and code-breaking, gave decisive advantages. American mass production replaced losses faster than Japan could inflict them. Even Yamamoto's warnings underestimated how fast America would convert its civilian economy to war. By 1944, the United States was producing more war material in a single month than Japan produced in an entire year. The factories Yamamoto had visited in the 1920s were now operating at levels beyond imagination. The River Rouge complex alone produced more military vehicles than all Japanese factories combined. August 1945 brought the final proof of Yamamoto's warnings. The atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki were the ultimate products of American science and industry. Power even Yamamoto had not fully imagined, though he had warned of American technological superiority. The Manhattan Project cost $2 billion, more than Japan spent on its entire war effort. It employed 130,000 workers, consumed more electricity than entire Japanese cities, and required levels of industrial precision Japan could not achieve. The bombs were delivered by B-29 Super Fortress bombers, each aircraft costing more than a Japanese destroyer and produced in numbers Japan could never match. Captain Ellis Zacharias, Yamamoto's former poker partner in Washington, later broadcast messages to Japan in Japanese. "Your Admiral Yamamoto knew this day would come," he said. "He saw our factories, our oil fields,
our laboratories. He warned you. You chose not to listen. The final production statistics of the war confirmed every calculation Yamamoto had made. Aircraft produced: United States, 300,000. Japan, 76,320. Aircraft carriers: United States, 141. Japan, 16. Battleships: United States, 8. Japan, 2. Submarines: United States, 203. Japan, 126. Merchant shipping: United States, 33.9 million tons. Japan, 4.1 million tons. These were not just numbers. They were mathematical proof of what Yamamoto had understood decades earlier. Once awakened, an industrial giant could not be defeated by an island nation dependent on imported resources. After Japan's surrender, American occupation forces discovered Yamamoto's private papers, letters never sent and diaries never meant to be read. They revealed the full depth of his knowledge and despair. In an unsent letter to Emperor Hirohito dated December 1, 1941, Yamamoto wrote, "Your Majesty, I have failed to prevent this war. Having seen America's strength with my own eyes, I know we cannot win. Their factories can produce unlimited weapons. Their oil fields can fuel unlimited operations. Once their people are aroused, they will not stop until total victory. I can give Your Majesty 6 months of success. After that, mathematics decides the outcome. We are 70 million people with no resources, fighting 130 million with unlimited resources. The result is fixed." In another letter written days before his death to his successor, Admiral Minachi Koga, Yamamoto was even more direct. "You will inherit a fleet that is doomed, not from lack of courage or skill, but because of industrial mathematics. For every ship we lose, they will build 3. For every plane destroyed, they will build 10. Every gallon of fuel we burn brings us closer to immobility, while they swim in oceans of oil. We fight not a nation, but a continental industrial machine. Hold out as honor demands, but know that defeat is certain." The deepest irony of Yamamoto's life lies not in how he died, but in how he lived. The man who best understood America's power was forced to lead the war against it. The admiral who knew Japan would lose had to plan the attack that ensured that loss. The prophet who warned against awakening the giant was ordered to strike the blow that woke it. His former Harvard professors were stunned when they learned of his role in Pearl Harbor. One of them, Professor Tedward McNally, later said, "Yamamoto knew better than anyone that Japan could not win. He saw our steel mills, our oil fields, our assembly lines. He understood mass production. For him to plan Pearl Harbor must have been agony." But Yamamoto had no choice. In Imperial Japan's rigid system, refusal meant disgrace and abandonment of duty. He could not stop the war, but perhaps he could shorten it, limit the suffering, and force negotiations before total destruction. After the war, Japanese historians finally recognized the depth of their failure. Every warning Yamamoto had given proved true. Admiral Soemu Toyoda, who commanded the fleet near the end of the war, admitted, "Yamamoto saw what we refused to see. He had been to America. He understood their strength. We dismissed his warnings as defeatism. We believed spirit could defeat material power. He knew spirit cannot defeat mathematics." Even General Hideki Tojo, the prime minister who had driven Japan into war, admitted during his trial, "Yamamoto told us we could not win."
He had studied in America. He understood their industry. We believed he had been corrupted by Western thinking. We were wrong. He was simply telling the truth. The tragedy went far beyond one man being ignored. Japan's entire military leadership had dismissed the only officer who had truly studied the enemy. They chose comforting myths over hard facts. They believed spiritual strength could overcome machines. They preferred faith in national destiny over measured reality. Yamamoto was respected more by his enemies than by his own leaders. American naval officers who had known him expressed genuine sorrow at his death, even as they celebrated the mission's success. Admiral Chester Nimitz, who approved Operation Vengeance, later said Yamamoto was the only Japanese leader who truly understood American power. "He studied our country," Nimitz said. "He knew our industry. He understood our psychology. His death was necessary but tragic. He knew the truth and was forced to act against it." Ellis Zacharias, Yamamoto's poker partner from the 1920s, wrote one of the most fitting judgments. "Yamamoto was a prophet without honor in his own land. He saw our economic strength and warned against challenging it. He understood that modern war is won in factories, not on battlefields. His tragedy was being too clear-sighted in a culture that valued obedience over truth." Captain Edwin Layton, one of the officers who helped break Japanese naval codes, reflected later, "We killed the one Japanese leader who might have shortened the war. He knew Japan had already lost. After his death, leadership passed to men who believed their own propaganda. The war continued for 2 more brutal years." In the 1970s, declassified documents revealed just how accurate Yamamoto's American intelligence work had been. His reports from the 1920s predicted American wartime production within astonishing precision. He estimated aircraft production within 10% of actual peak output, oil production within 5%, steel within 15%, shipbuilding capacity within 20%. Using only notebooks, slide rules, and direct observation, Yamamoto had calculated America's future war output more accurately than many later computer models. Most striking of all was his prediction of Pearl Harbor's effect. In a 1940 memo, Yamamoto wrote, "A surprise attack on Pearl Harbor will succeed tactically, but fail strategically. The American people will unite in rage. Their industrial power, once driven by anger, will be unstoppable." That is exactly what happened. Yamamoto's story is larger than one war or one nation. It is about the danger of wishful thinking when faced with mathematical reality. He had seen the numbers. He had walked the factories. He had measured the production. He knew the outcome. His tragedy was not ignorance, but clarity. In his final letter to Chiyo Kawashima, written just days before his death, Yamamoto found a quiet peace. "I have done my duty as I understood it. I warned them based on what I had seen. I spoke of factories, oil, and endless production. They chose war anyway. I led the fleet knowing we would lose, hoping only to reduce the disaster. History will judge whether I was right to serve a cause I knew was doomed. But I could not abandon my country, even when my country abandoned reason."
He ended with a short poem that captured his life. Spring rain in Texas. I saw iron become fate. Math defeats courage. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto died knowing every prediction he had made would come true. The 6 months of victories he promised lasted from December 7, 1941 to June 4, 1942, almost exactly to the day. The industrial wave he warned about arrived with mathematical certainty. The giant he feared to awaken arose exactly as he predicted. His years in America, at Harvard, in Detroit factories, in Texas oil fields, in Washington offices, gave him perfect foresight. He did not just see America's strength, he understood its hidden potential. He knew modern war was decided by production numbers, not courage alone. The factories he studied became the arsenals that crushed the empire he served. The oil fields he measured fueled the fleets that destroyed Japan's navy. The assembly lines he observed built the aircraft that burned Japanese cities. Every notebook he filled became a prophecy fulfilled. Yet Yamamoto's story is not only about defeat. It is about the courage to speak truth to power when no one wants to listen. He saw what others refused to see. He counted what others refused to count. He warned what others refused to hear. His tragedy was not that he was wrong, it was that he was completely right. In the end, Yamamoto's American education taught him the harshest lesson of all. In modern industrial war, mathematics is destiny. He did the math. He saw the evidence. He calculated the outcome. Japan would have 6 months to run wild, then face defeat by an awakened industrial giant. He was right to the day. The man who warned Japan that it would lose after 6 months became history's most tragic prophet. Forced to lead a war he knew was lost before it began, killed by the technology he had warned would decide it, and proven right only in the ruins of his nation. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto had seen America, and he knew.